What's up, guys? Tommy Bowyer here from Movie Rewind. I'm joined by MLC, and today we'll be discussing Spider-Man No Way Home. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the first discussion
Hello.
of 2022. I am joined by MLC. I hope you're all having a wonderful day. And of course, it has been a long time
It's
since
been,
we last did a
yeah,
discussion.
wasn't it like since summer since we've last been on Movie Rewind together? Well, I mean,
I
I
feel
featured
like
in the Christmas special, but when we actually been
yeah.
together on a video
No, we haven't done like a video together in like, well, as you said,
since
like
summer.
summertime. So yeah, it's been a long time. But as I said in my New Year's video, I'm hoping to do one discussion per month with MLC. So by the end of the year, we should have a total of 12 discussions on this channel. Hopefully, there'll be more videos than that, of course. But this is the initial aim, and I hope you guys really enjoy it. Now, for our first discussion of the year, we both agreed that we wanted to talk about a film, which,
Yes,
let's face it,
the
was the
highlight of the
film
year.
of
It's
2021.
the
Yeah,
highlight of the year.
and that is, of course, Spider-Man No Way Home. Now, first of all, MLC, going into this film, what was your expectations?
Well, I mean, I sort of had some expectations of who would show up in the movie because I saw some set photos beforehand, but that's like so I knew somewhat that you could class that as a spoiler, but in terms of the story, I had no idea of. The only idea of the story was what from the initial trailers, and I also watched some of the cast interviews as well. So that was my only indication of how this movie could be. All I knew was that they're going to have all these villains here, and like apparently like I heard then Green Goblin was going to be like the main villain of it, and that got me really excited to see Willem Dafoe finally get the time of the spotlight again. So you know I wasn't even so hyped for seeing the other Spider-Man, if I'm honest. It was more hyped for seeing Doc Ock, Green Goblin return as their characters, and that's what got me excited. Seeing William Dafoe again as Green Goblin. Just that vibe and nostalgia from a childhood. I grew up on Spider-Man. In fact, funny story, I remember going to see Spider-Man dressed up as Spider-Man with our good old friend Beefcake, and I had the powder suit, and I remember Ryan coming out and saying, "You look like you got big titties."
Nothing's changed.
Yeah.
Nothing has changed there in
Yeah, I
Beefcake's
remember like being
blunt
6 or 7,
replies.
going to see Spider-Man 3 just Spider-Man. Yeah, Spider-Man was my whole life growing up. So then, of course, seeing the Tom Holland Spider-Man films, I absolutely loved and adored. And then seeing what they're going to do with this, and finally, that potential that they're finally going to give Spider-Man that depth and make him Spider-Man. Because the first two films have been a progression up to, being actually Spider-Man, what it means to be Spider-Man, and discovering that and going through that journey of, finding out what it actually means and the gravity of having this power, this instead of before where he's just been, showered by Tony Stark and he's been a bit cushy from the greater world, whereas he's been in this movie, he's really put in the deep end, he's really, put through the runners basically, and he's forced to, embrace what it means to actually be Spider-Man. And I was so hyped and pumped for this movie. I remember, I went to see it with a bunch of friends from uni. We had this planned for ages. We booked tickets as soon as tickets were released. We booked tickets. We couldn't get the opening Wednesday because they sold out instantly, so we went on the Thursday. And we had all sorts of plans. We wanted to dress up as Spider-Man and and stuff, but we couldn't get costumes in time. But yeah, the hype for this movie. It's been the build up of the year.
No, no, I agree with all that. Obviously, the Tobey Maguire films were part of my childhood as well. The nostalgia is massive with those films. The first Spider-Man film I saw in cinema was The Amazing Spider-Man. So, all rumors that Andrew Garfield was returning and all that. Obviously, they were rumors at this stage, but we were pretty sure it was going to happen. So it was gonna be a massive nostalgia trip for me personally. I felt like I could. Uh, and I did really hope that this film would make me fall in love with the character all over again and remind me why I love Spider-Man as a superhero so much. And it succeeded on all levels there. I went with Beefcake. And we went in, and I have to say, Beefcake is one of the best people to go to the cinemas with, because his reactions are just amazing. Yeah. Whenever there was like a character introduced on screen, he'd be sitting there going, "Oh yes, like did it."
Oh, I got a bit of a funny story. One of my friends, James from uni, he was oblivious to everything. He had not seen a single trailer. He had not watched a single trailer, so he didn't even know like Doc Ock was in the movie. But his reaction when Doc Ock came on screen was like, "Whoa, holy shit, what?" But then the most magical thing was his reaction seeing the Spider-Man, because he had no idea that this could possibly happen. So when he saw Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire, he was like, holy shit, like shouting that out in the cinema. He was the shock. Like, I saw this coming, so it wasn't as big as a shock. But the fact that, he watched 0 trailers and knew absolutely nothing about this movie, just seeing that reaction was just wow.
I know. I to be honest, I have loads of respect for people who can do that, because I'm too nosy. Like, I cave it. I have no willpower. Like, I was looking at the so-called leaked set photos, and even though we didn't know if they were real or they looked quite authentic. Yeah. And actually, one of the joys of watching this film was seeing like that's one of the leaked photographs that scene. Yeah. You could see where the leaks had come from, which was really good. But anyways, to start off with, when this film's Sorry. What were you saying?
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, like, we should give our, initial impressions of the movie before we deep in.
That is a good idea. I'm getting too ahead of the game. Well, my initial impression of this film, I don't think I've ever sat through a film before where I've just had a permanent smile on my face throughout. It was just an absolute joy watching this film. As I said in my review, it was fun, it was exciting, it was emotional as well.
It had all the depth
very
to it.
Nostalgic. The film used nostalgia very, very well. There were certain callbacks. So, for instance, Norman Osborn saying, "I'm something of a scientist myself."
Yeah, that line was a little bit cheesy, but that was like the only moment where it's sort of like, come on.
See, I thought that worked.
I really enjoyed it, but it felt a bit shoehorned in just to get that reference. But that's like the only sort of gripe I have with But I know why they did it, but I did enjoy it though.
Yeah, and my initial impression of the film was really strong. I'm one of those people. I enjoyed Spider-Man: Homecoming. The more and more times I watch Far From Home, the more problems I have with that. I wanted Tom Holland to kind of come out of the shadow of Iron Man. I wanted him to stand his own in this film, and actually he gave his strongest performance I've seen in the role so far. Yeah. He was excellent in this film. And other Marvel characters in this, like Doctor Strange, they didn't overshadow it. Yeah. They played quite a limited part, which I thought was really good. It was a true Spider-Man film. Spider-Man was the center of it, and he had to deal with these problems himself. And I thought that was a really good thing. So, what was your initial impression? My
initial reaction was like, wow. Like, I didn't know what to think, because I was overwhelmed with emotions, if I'm being honest. All good ones, all good and positive, but my reaction and processing emotions can sometimes be a bit delayed because I'm a bit special. But I just a part of me like wanted to cry over what I just saw, because I'm like, it was like everything I could have wanted, and it's like, and seeing all of that, and it reminds of it was the reminder of my childhood, and the fact it was a good movie, and it reminded me of so much of the good things about me growing up. I grew up with Spider-Man, and it brought a lot of that back. And the thing that got me the most was, it was the scene when Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man got reunited with Doc Ock. And it was like, "Oh, Peter, it's like great to see you, my boy." And he's like, he looked at me, he's like, "Oh, you're grown up," and I'm like, that's like because I was a tiny little kid when I first watched Spider-Man 2, and it's like I've seen, and to see Doc Ock again and say you're all grown up, I'm like, holy shit. It just highlights the impact it's had on my childhood.
No, I agree with you on that. As I said, this film uses nostalgia really, really well. Yeah. It makes the most of all of the characters it had. And going into this film, I made a video before this film came out saying I was a little concerned that this film was going to feel overcrowded, and because expectations were so high, I thought maybe, just maybe, they would fall short. But to be honest, in most aspects, no, they didn't fall short. It was balanced it. Yeah, they had so many characters, and yet it did not feel overcrowded in the slightest. Now, I think that probably has something to do with the fact that we've seen all of these villains before. They've been in their own films. We know their backstories. We know what kind of characters they are. And that made it a lot easier. I think if you were introducing 6 brand new villains, that wouldn't work. We've seen that tried in other Spider-Man films, and that's failed.
Yeah. And I'm happy also that, they gave Electro as well. They did him justice in the end.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I think I think Jamie Foxx probably went in wanting to change the most about his character because, let's face it, Electro in The Amazing Spider-Man 2 was not perfect.
No.
Started out with promise, but then fell short quite a lot. In this, he is a lot better. He's a much stronger, consistent type of character. And I like the fact that they reference that he looks different. They don't just kind of gloss over it. They actually kind of explain it in a way.
Yeah, I love the explanation. That it goes because of how electricity and the power works in this universe, how it can change the color. So I thought they actually pulled it off really well. It made sense. It wasn't just like, oh, he was blue then, but now he's yellow.
And that goes for most of the villains in this, I would say. There are a couple of, I don't want to call them plot holes or inconsistencies because they're not really, but like Doc Ock, when he died, did not know that Norman Osborn was the Green Goblin because Norman Osborn was never revealed to be the Green Goblin in that universe. So there was a couple of tiny, because I went to see it again at the weekend, and it was little stuff like that, which isn't a massive issue because you can kind of gloss over, but it's little things like that. Well, actually, that doesn't make a lot of sense. No one really knew that Norman Osborn was the Green Goblin unless they found out after Harry died. But then that doesn't make sense because Doc Ock was already dead. So there's tiny little scenes like that.
Or maybe it clicked together. Actually, maybe it clicked together because he saw Norman without the mask on, as in the Green Goblin clothes.
Maybe
that clicked and it's like, oh, right. We know Green Goblin died. We know Norman Osborn died. Put the two together. Died.
Well, maybe that's right. And hey, if that it's small, it's tiny. It doesn't actually affect my enjoyment of this film, but it's a small little thing, if that makes sense. Yeah. One thing I was really impressed with this film was the relationship between Peter Parker and MJ. I felt that was really strong. Obviously, Tom Holland and Zendaya, they're dating in real life, which does help.
So when they filmed this movie, they weren't.
No, but you can obviously see there is very strong chemistry between them in this film.
You're flirting not just for the camera, are you? And
the inclusion of Ned in that as well, because it could have been very easy for Ned to kind of just be sidelined.
Yeah. Oh, I love a lot of the references Ned had.
Yeah.
When he said when he learned how to do the portal, he said, "Oh, I promise, I'm not going to turn evil and try and kill you," which is a reference because Ned in the comics his character becomes Hobgoblin.
Yeah.
Which was a nice little reference, because in the comics he does turn evil and try to kill Peter.
Yeah, that is true. There was a lot of referencing, but I like those three together. I think they're a very good group.
Yeah. Oh, the dynamic between the three.
Yeah.
Which is why I was really upset with the ending because I fucking love the dynamic so much.
I felt we'll get onto the ending a bit later, but yeah, that was heartbreaking. Territory I thought Marvel never really would go to.
Yeah.
But anyway, let's the return, as you've said, of classic villains like Alfred Molina, Willem Dafoe, even like Thomas Hayden Church as Sandman, Rhys Ifans as a Lizard. What villain were you most impressed with?
Well, of course, Doc and of course the main three. Goblin, Doc, Electro. I felt like they sidelined Lizard and Sandman a lot. In fact, they sidelined them so much that the footage where you see them come out of their forms wasn't even the actors came back. They were actually taken from Spider-Man 3 and the Amazing Spider-Man 2. I mean, 1 should I
Yeah.
say, because with Blizzard. So I felt like they were quite sidelined and were done a bit dirty. Like the actors only came back for the voices, not actually physical appearances. But Doc Ock, I love to see, and I love his arc and how he, sort of got his redemption again, and he came back. How his ship was fixed, and he was able, to have a heroic moment and repay the favor back. Electro, like we touched on, I felt like they did a much better job. He gave his character a lot more depth, and actually, I liked his character in this. But of course, Goblin's, Willem Dafoe's as Green Goblin was my favorite. In fact, it is sinister performance. It was so. It was scary. If anything, I think. I didn't expect to feel this way, but I thought his performance in some places was a lot more chilling than in the first Spider-Man movie.
Oh,
just
Defoe's,
hearing that iconic laugh
yeah.
and the evil in his voice and like, oh my god, like the scene where Peter had his first fight and they were slamming each other through the apartment walls and everything, and like seeing his reaction, and like when Peter was punching him, I was like, oh my. I was like,
yeah,
fucking hell.
No, I mean, I agree. Defoe is amazing. I mean, he does all his own stunts, and he is so well suited to the Green Goblin role. And the funny thing is, there was kind of like this trend a little while ago, which had been actually promoted by Nostalgia Critic and creators like that, basically saying that Willem Dafoe was rubbish as Green Goblin and was one of the biggest embarrassments to the original trilogy. Now, I never believed that. Defoe, for me, is so well suited to that role. It's an iconic performance, and I think this film really does show how good he is. I mean, even without the mask on, he is still chilling. I mean, you talk about the first battle, the final battle between Spider-Man and Green Goblin is intense. The fact that Green Goblin is like actually impressed that Spider-Man wants him dead.
He wanted him.
He wants him. Yeah, he wants him to kill him. He wants to push him to that point, and that was done really, really well. So Defoe nailed it. You could tell he was having a laugh being back, and you now hear all these behind the scenes that apparently he actually scared actors on set, and that just shows what a great actor he was.
Yeah.
I loved seeing Alfred Molina back. He is really well. He performs well as Doc Ock as well.
Yeah, perfect.
As Matthew said, I liked as MLC. I liked the redemption arc for Doc Ock. I felt that was done well. Part of me wished I'd seen more fight scenes with Doc Ock. I don't know. Maybe I'm just being greedy.
But mind you, the first initial fight scene, filled me with a lot of excitement. That first opening scene with Doc Ock and the fight they had on the highway, that was well done. The cinematography of that and the execution of that scene, and how badass, powerful Doc Ock was, and he was going fully ham. He was pissed, like you could tell. Because where he was spawned in, they say that he was taken from reality as he was falling into the water, but apparently something to do with how the chip got corrupted erased the memory of when he came around and had his heroic redemption. So when he got transported to the current MCU world, he wasn't aware of his heroic sacrifice. He was just out for blood. So he remembered who Peter Parker was, but he was out for blood. What the fuck have you done with my machine, you little bitch?
Yeah, and then as you said, there was a lot. And it was very clever how they, going back to how it was very clever how they brought the villains back, because obviously we all knew, having seen Spider-Man 2, that Doc Ock had redeemed himself, and obviously Green Goblin had died. So bringing back these characters, they did it in a clever way, which didn't feel like shoehorned in or kind of just, we just got to ignore that obvious thing. We just got to accept it. It was done very cleverly, and I felt that was really well done. Now, obviously, the main point of this film is what happens at the end of Far From Home when J. Jonah Jameson outs Peter Parker as Spider-Man using that footage that Mysterio gave him. And actually, on that side note, J.K. Simmons was awesome in this film as well.
I love the changes they did to his character. So they made him like sort of like an Alex Jones type character, and then they show how like he moved up in the Daily Bugle. to become this
Yeah,
big network
it's
after he
like,
broke the news.
yeah, it's like because he broke that news, he's now very successful. I mean, I love the scene when he's like marketing something.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, because that, I don't know, it was like J. Jonah Jameson in a modern world, and I think that suited the character very
Yeah,
well.
it
But anyway,
was a very
obviously,
good take.
I like the first like 15 minutes of this
Oh yeah,
film
it
because it
was
feels
great. Yeah.
very real in the sense that that's exactly how society would react.
Yeah.
They would be all over it. They'd be divided about it, and that worked really well. And a lot of people were saying before going into this film, oh, they're just gonna kind of gloss over the fact that he'd be charged and he'd have to go to court and things like that. But then, of course, the first surprise return of the movie, you see
I was very
Matt
happy
Murdock.
when I saw
And
Charlie Cox walk on the screen as Matt Murdock. I was like,
yeah,
about fucking time. Yeah.
that was a really well done scene, especially when the brick goes through the wall and he's just like, "I'm a very good lawyer."
And it's like we all know
Yeah.
how he caught that, and with with the introduction of Daredevil, apparently, they're basically canonized the events of the Daredevil series into the MCU now. So they're basically saying, the Daredevil we're seeing, it's not like an alternate version or just the same face. His character is what we have seen in the Netflix series, and they just find a way to bridge and canonize the events that we've already seen. So it's the same character.
Yeah.
It's like if anyone has watched Hawkeye, you will know who has made their grand return in that movie, and that is, of course, the one and only Wilson Fisk.
Yes, that is true. Yes.
So I hope it's interesting to see what they do with this character. But I love how they're branching these characters now, and and Daredevil and Spider-Man and Kingpin, they go really well in the comics. So I'm excited to see what the future holds.
Well, Kingpin was a Spider-Man villain before Daredevil kind of became the arch enemy of Daredevil. So Kingpin has history far longer than Daredevil. But yeah, I really liked seeing Matt Murdock back in this. I feel like he was in it enough. Like, he only had one scene, but it was a really good scene. Yeah. So
it was just enough to not oversaturate the movie.
It was one of those cameos which the MCU do really, really well. They're very good at having characters appear in just one scene, and it feels satisfying. So it's very, very good. They're very good at doing that. Now, in terms of, I don't really know. I didn't really have any idea about how this film's plot was going to take place.
Yeah, I didn't know what the plot was even going to be, if I'm honest, or had an idea.
No. And obviously, it gets going pretty quickly. I mean, we see Peter Parker turn up at Doctor Strange, like, I need to come up with this spell, and Doctor Strange just like, yeah, sure. What the hell? I'll do it.
Yeah, which shows Doctor Strange at the moment with his powers. He's at a point where he feels, super powerful and, like, mighty with his powers, and he's very overconfident, quite cocky in a way with his powers at the moment. With, of course, that will then feed into Doctor Strange Multiverse Madness, where he then sort of, has a moment where he lives the gravity of his power and, the effects of his actions. But like, the Doctor Strange feels like he's very mighty, Sorcerer Supreme, I can do anything.
And actually, I have to say, I really liked Doctor Strange in this film, and the fact that he weren't mentoring Peter. If anything, they were coming into conflict at several points during this film because they disagreed about the best way forward. Now, obviously, as we see them capture the villains, and then Doctor Strange is like, look, I'm sending these guys back, and some of them are going to die.
Yeah.
It's just what's going to happen. But obviously, Peter's been influenced by what Aunt May said.
Yeah.
So, and the fight scene between Spider-Man and Doctor Strange, I thought was really cool as well. I liked how it included the mirror dimension, and that we got to see all of the effects, which of course define the Doctor Strange film.
Like that.
Yeah, so I thought that fight scene was really, really cool. And the fact that Spider-Man actually defeats Doctor Strange,
outsmarts.
I thought was pretty impressive as well.
Because Doctor Strange as a character himself, he's a very smart person. He was a doctor before he became Doctor Strange, and he's to master the magic. You got to have a very big brain. So the fact that Peter was able to outsmart him and best him at that, like, oof.
And as I said previously, I felt like Doctor Strange was in enough of this movie. I think if you compile it, he's in like probably a third of this film or something like that. So I'd say he's in it enough. he provides his purpose. You know, he causes the problem. Him and Spider-Man have conflict, and then he's gone for a bit, and then he'll come back. So I felt like he was gone. He was in it just enough to not feel like it was a Spider-Man and Doctor Strange film. And as I said, my concern with previous ones, it felt like Spider-Man and Iron Man film.
Yeah.
But obviously then we see them go in, and he's trying to fix them. He fixed Doc Ock, which I thought was a really good thing.
Yeah.
The fact that a really good scene when Doc Ock's like, he can't hear any voices anymore.
The voices
I felt that was done quite
everything
well.
Is clear. I thought, wow.
Yeah.
Because, yes.
But then this takes us to probably what I would say is a really strong Spider-Man scene when Peter's spider sense goes off.
And
he's looking
knew
around.
Something was wrong. He could
Yeah.
sense the Goblin coming out.
And that's a really amazing scene, because I was on the edge of my seat, because I had an idea it's the Green Goblin. We all know this, but it's like he's trying to figure out which one is going to cause the problem. And obviously then we get a very good fight scene between Spider-Man and Green Goblin.
Oh, that
quite
was brutal.
brutal. I mean, he gets punched in this. I mean, there's no way about it.
It was a brutal. I imagine like if Spider-Man was a 15 rated.
Oh god, that would have been even more bloody. That would have been bloody intense. And everything.
But yeah, that fight scene, I felt that was fucking tense. I was like, holy shit.
And then we get, of course, and I really wish I'd recorded myself saying this, but I didn't, because I thought this was going to happen. We then see Aunt May get killed.
Oh, yeah.
And that was
gut-wrenching.
That was a very emotional scene, but also I'd say a very poignant scene, in the sense of it was a turning point. That was Holland's Peter Parker's "with great power comes great responsibility" scene. That was his Uncle Ben's death there. It came in the third film.
Yeah.
But that was the turning point. That's when he realised, he has to take responsibility for his actions, and that
it gave him the emotional depth to become
one of his
what Spider-Man is about.
And her death was handled so well.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, Holland's acting in the scenes involving that death and after it was just amazing.
It was, yeah, and especially the scene after of him, sitting on the rooftop crying. It's like,
yeah,
I felt that.
because that just,
and that was
there didn't need to be any words, did there? It was.
I
we
don't
all knew.
cry at movies, but I felt that. I'm like, and my eyes were walling up at that. I was like, oh my god, that really got me. That's the sign of a good movie where, as someone who doesn't get really emotional at movies, and that got me.
Yeah, if you're that invested in a film, like while it's that just shows that the film you're watching is a cracking good film. And obviously, then we get, which is, I want to make it clear here, in the UK, they don't really have a reputation for an audience exploding.
Yeah.
I don't know if you agree with me on that, but
yeah,
it doesn't
America's
really happen
the wild, woo, cheering at the cinema, raving in the cinema. But yeah, the audience reaction.
Yeah, and I went to see this in a very local cinema, which is like in a small area. I live in the countryside.
And I saw mine in the city.
And when Ned does that, and we see a Spider-Man coming towards us, and I was sitting there like, is this that he jumps through, takes off the mask, Andrew Garfield. The audience went insane.
Everyone's cheering.
I mean, it was just to see that actor again in that role was just like, it's something that even a year ago didn't seem possible. Like, you really didn't think that this would even happen. And then to see it happen was just insane.
Oh, it was amazing.
I felt Garfield's reveal especially was done really, really well. You knew it was coming, but it really did. It was one of those, I think it's one of those moments you're always going to remember seeing for the first time.
Yeah.
It will stick with you. And then, of course, you see Maguire come through as well. And I don't know, but Maguire's looking a little old now.
I mean, he is. Isn't he like 49 or 48?
Something like
he's late 40s.
compared to Garfield, he's eight, and obviously, yeah, it's been like 14 years since
But
we
then
last
again,
saw him.
his Spider-Man is meant to be that age though. Like they're not
Yeah.
trying to mask his age or saying he's the same Peter from Spider-Man 3. No, he is an older Peter Parker. Whereas Andrew Garfield's, they don't Andrew Garfield doesn't age too much, so he could pull off soon after the Amazing Spider-Man 2. Though it's not being revealed just how long it, or just exactly where he's been plucked from the timeline. But with Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, it is something like 20 years after Spider-Man 3.
And I think out of both of them, like I'm a Maguire fan for life. He is my Spider-Man.
He was my childhood.
But Garfield's performance in this was, it was extraordinary. You really did feel like that. The Amazing Spider-Man 2 underperformed, so his third film was cancelled. He was coming back and he was giving it his all because he wanted to finish it. He wanted to put his mind at rest.
He needed that redemption after the Amazing Spider-Man 2.
You could tell at certain points, he was loving just being in this film, being with those other actors, as Spider-Man again. You could tell he was just loving it. And the interactions between them, because that's one of the things. This film is not an action film. If you're going into this film expecting to see a massive action film, you're not going to get it. This is a film, I'd say, based on character interactions. It's seeing different characters interact with one another. And the scenes involving all three Spider-Men and seeing them interact with one another are done really well. I love the scene when they're at the Statue of Liberty where they're discussing like the craziest villains they fought.
Yeah.
And they're kind of all trying to one-up one another, and it's like, oh, I thought that. I thought that was... I don't know, that was just some really light scenes.
I'm not going to lie, guys.
It's just a pleasure to watch. That Avengers joke was really, really fun.
The Avengers. You don't. Oh.
And that, of course, takes us to I say the final fight scene, but the scene in which we see all Spider-Man fight. Yeah. Oh my god, that was an amazing scene, especially of course when we see Spider-Man go up against Sandman, Electro, and Lizard, and we see that scene from the trailer, which everyone was saying, look at Lizard.
Was edited, as we knew.
But that was great action scene.
Yeah.
The audience were going like, that was a really well done action scene. I felt like
it was really good. Yeah.
I felt like it didn't focus on like one Spider-Man more than the others in that action scene. Like they all got their standout moments in that.
Yeah. I definitely didn't feel like the other Spider-Man drowned out any one of the others.
No.
I felt like it was perfectly balanced, and and when they like had that big grand swing together where you saw all the Spider-Men working in tandem with each other, and I remember the bit when they swung off each other to pull each other forward. I was like,
yeah. It's little scenes like that which just make it that much more special. Another scene which I think is, and I think I said in my review, this was my scene of the film, is when Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man rescues MJ.
Yeah.
And that was Garfield's acting in that
the
scene.
Emotion portrayed through his acting was top notch. Like you felt that heart-wrenching moment where you see Green Goblin's glider swipe Tom Holland's Spider-Man away, and you just see MJ falling, and then suddenly you see Andrew Garfield going, and he catches her. But that wasn't the bit that got me. It was the bit after where you see him holding MJ, and the reaction, the emotion portrayed on his face. Like you just and I was like, that was another one that really got me in the feels, because I can just the amount of emotion portrayed in that performance was.
Yeah.
You fucking felt it. Took Andrew Garfield as Spider-Man. Did such a good job. It's just a shame, the main Spider-Man and Sony did him so dirty, because Andrew Garfield, of course, is an amazing actor.
Oh yeah, he is top class, and he is someone, I think, out of all of them, who really does care about the character of Spider-Man. I mean, it was a massive deal for him to take on that role, which is all the more tragic that it was taken away from him in such brutal fashion. And of course, there's actually been revelations recently that actually Sony tried to persuade Marvel to keep Garfield on in the role of initially, and obviously Marvel didn't want it. They wanted a clean break, which was probably the right thing to do if you're introducing the character to the MCU. But there has been a trending since the film was released about making the Amazing Spider-Man 3. And you know what? I'd love to see Spider-Man 4 with Tobey Maguire.
I would get behind that.
Garfield deserves Amazing Spider-Man 3 so much more.
No doubt.
He would be amazing, and I think he would be up for it. The character is that important to him that I think he would definitely be up for something like that. Just small scenes, like when he says like, "Can I just say I love you guys?"
Yeah.
And it's like, it was small scenes like that which just made it that much better. I mean, I've never seen an audience, even like in small scenes like the fight scenes, my audience was very interactive with the film, and that's something I haven't seen before. So you could tell this film meant a lot to the people who were seeing it. And I'm gonna say, I feel like this film, it was a film for the fans.
Yeah.
There was a lot of fan service in this, and sometimes big films are afraid of giving fan service. But this film weren't, and it made it that much better.
It's the fact that it was fan service. Yes, there was a lot of fan service, but it wasn't, forced fan service where that was the only thing that carried the movie and the only thing that was good about the movie. I mean, if you want an example of, fan service where it's overused, I mean, just The Matrix Resurrections. That movie was very heavily carried from nostalgia and the previous movies, and in fact, they use a lot of the same references. That they even show clips from the old movie in that movie, and they, the first half of the movie was pretty a reenactment of the first film. They got different actors in to play some of the characters, but then it didn't quite work. They tried to replace Hugo Weaving as Agent Smith, and the new actor just basically copied the line, and even some of the fight choreography, some bits that's direct copy from the first movie, and I felt like in times they used it too heavily to carry the movie, whereas they used in this movie in Spider-Man, they used fan service perfectly, not to carry the movie, yes, to give fans a lot of positive reactions, but that wasn't the driving force that carried the movie.
No,
and they did it, and they executed it very well.
No, I agree. I agree with you on that. I feel like you would appreciate this film. You suppose you could say that to any film. You'd appreciate this film a lot more if you were a fan of Spider-Man.
Oh yeah.
Because obviously it was going to be very hard to have a film which brings the Spider-Man fan base together, because it's a very divided fan base. A lot of them don't get on, with one another. But I feel like this film did a really good job of uniting it, because it had something in there for everyone. If you like Maguire's films, if you like Garfield's films, if you like Holland's films, it brought it all together. But saying that, I like that Maguire and Garfield only appeared in like a third of the film, because it is still Holland's film. It's still his trilogy. It's still his trilogy, so he deserved to have the majority of the screen time. And I think as we're clocking on a bit, we'll get to the ending, because obviously the ending is probably a big part. Now, I did not have a clue how this film was going to end. I was thinking about it in the cinema, but my God, I had no idea it was going to be so heartbreaking.
The ending,
my God. That was... And I love, because it reminds me a lot of the scene in the first Spider-Man film where Peter decides he can't be with Mary Jane because he puts her in danger. And when he sees that she's got that plaster on her head, it's just like, you know what? She's better off not knowing me, because then she won't be in danger. And that was heartbreaking. I mean,
the fact that Ned and MJ never remembered who he was was very heartbreaking. And the fact he wanted to try and make her remember, but then decided I want to leave you and be happy. And
but that really did reinforce the with great power comes great responsibility, because he's always going to have enemies, and he can't put his loved ones at risk. So that's when he decides. And saying that, when he moves in to the new flat, which really does look like the flat from Spider-Man 2 and Spider-Man 3, I was half expecting Mr. Djokovic to turn up. I honestly thought that was going to happen. It didn't, which was sad. but I love where the character of Spider-Man is now. He's got that homemade classic suit,
Oh yeah.
and him going out of the window to have like a final swing, you could say, in the Christmas in the snow. I felt that was done really, really well as well, because obviously Spider-Man had a tradition of having a final swing. I'm glad that they did that for this film, because I felt it rounded it off
Yeah,
in a really good
they
way.
brought it back. It was perfect.
For me, as I said in my review, the Spider-Man Home trilogy, I now look at it as a full origin story to the character of Spider-Man. You know, he understands what he needs to do with the responsibility and powers he has. He hasn't got any of the Avengers with him. None of them know who he are. He's completely on his own.
Yeah.
He is now your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. And I would love to see a Spider-Man 4 with Tom Holland. But then part of me doesn't. Part of me thinks they've ended it in a really satisfying way.
But you're gonna get it anyway.
Oh yeah, you're gonna get.
They've already
I mean,
confirmed
this
the Noah
film,
trilogy.
Yeah, I mean, this is Sony we're talking about, and this film's breaking all sorts of records. So
Yeah,
obviously
they've already confirmed the sign for another trilogy.
Yeah. So as we are nearly rounding off now, because we can just talk for hours. Final thoughts on this film.
Final thoughts on this movie. What? Definitely my favorite movie of the year. It's probably the most enjoyable movie I've watched for quite some time, if I'm being honest. Like, I've not had chills in a movie probably since like Avengers Endgame time. And yeah, it was the highlight of 2021. I'm glad that, you know, we were able to get back into cinemas and enjoy a masterpiece like this and have a movie with such depth. And I love this movie. It was the highlight of the year for me. Definitely. And I don't know, just everything about this movie just gets me in the feels. And that's how you know it's a mark of a good movie, because I loved every single aspect of this movie. I thought it was great. It was well executed. It's just a brilliant movie. I didn't know Marvel would be able to, you know, keep the great hits going like this. You know, of course, the past Marvel movies, you know, like Shang-Chi and like Eternals, you know, they're alright. You know, they're enjoyable, they're alright, but nothing quite like on this level of this peak level of, you know, the Marvel formula's been, you know, it's good. You know, every movie's good, but then it's like this takes it all the best of the Marvel movies we had since, and holy shit, this was it was all I could. This is more than I could have ever asked for. In fact, I say that the only thing that I would have asked for was that we heard a lot more of Danny Elfman's theme, because that's my favorite piece of like music of all time.
Yes, that is true. That is one thing. I agree with you on that. I'd love to hear.
We got some. At least we got some cues and stuff. But I wanted to hear the full.
Yeah, no, the original is.
But we got, you know, Green Goblin and Doc Ock's cues as well, so that was good, and even some cues from Hans Zimmer's theme as well.
I think what I would have to say is next time we meet, you might have to slap me in the face, because I said after Avengers Endgame that the MCU had reached its peak and it would be on a downward spiral now. I was wrong. I was really wrong. This film proved that the MCU's still got fuel in it. It can still come up with surprises, and it can do the unexpected. I mean, let's face it, a year ago, we wouldn't have even dreamed that this kind of film would exist, and now it does. So that is just amazing and something to be proud of.
Yeah, you know, going forward, you might see more Spider-Verse stuff. Apparently, there's calls from Marvel to potentially want to bring back Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield for Secret Wars.
Yes, I have heard that, and I've heard, as you say, rumors. I've heard rumors of Sony thinking about a Spider-Man 4, The Amazing Spider-Man 3. Obviously, they're heavy rumors, though. There probably isn't much truth in them, but obviously, I think this will create. Well, you know what Sony are like. They like bleeding franchises dry. This could start a new wave of Spider-Man related material coming out. We'll just have to see where things go. Yeah. In terms of, I would say this Spider-Man film is one of the best ones. Maybe not the best.
In terms of my rankings, it's the second best. Spider-Man 2 is number 1 for me. But this,
See, I might.
rank
I've
this
been
just-
thinking. I've been thinking recently about doing like a tier ranking of
we
Spider-Man
should, we
films.
should.
Maybe we. Well, who knows? We might do one together one day. You never
Yeah.
know. But that would be because then we can kind of see where we would differ on certain things. Because I'm sure we differ on at least one film. So anyway, guys, thanks for watching.
Yes,
really
thank you.
hope you enjoyed this discussion. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe in order to see great and maybe even improved quality content in the future. Thank you to MLC for joining us on a discussion. It's been great having you.
Yes.
And we're gonna do them more regularly. We'll be bringing out one next month.
Oh, we will.
Unless like something really weird happens, you know, like he goes to a different universe or something.
A universe.
Well, I don't know. The multiverse might exist. You might disappear. So anyway, guys, thank you for watching, and we will see you in another one.
Yes.
See ya.
Yes. Make sure we keep your spy sense tingling. Swing. Yes. Right. Bye, bye, people.